The Buddhist View on Death and Dying. By a lifelong researcher in Buddhist philosophy. In the great theater of human existence, there is no event more certain, and yet more fervently denied, than our own death. For many in the modern world, death is seen as the ultimate failure, a terrifying abyss of annihilation to be staved off at all costs and spoken of only in hushed, fearful tones. It is the final, unwelcome punctuation mark at the end of life's brief sentence. However, in the course of my 4 decades as a researcher and student of the Buddhist tradition, I have come to understand that this perspective of terror and denial is not the only way. The teachings of the Buddha offer a radically different and profoundly liberating view. From the Buddhist perspective, death is not an abrupt and horrifying end, but a natural, inevitable, and deeply significant transition. It is not a failure, but a fundamental law of the universe. Far from being a topic to be avoided, the contemplation of death is considered one of the most powerful and essential practices on the path to wisdom and liberation. The Buddha taught that to live wisely, we must learn to die wisely. And to die wisely, we must learn to live wisely. The two are inseparably intertwined. The Buddhist view transforms death from a source of ultimate terror into an unparalleled opportunity. It is seen as a moment of profound potential, a gateway through which the prepared mind can achieve the highest states of awakening. This is not based on wishful thinking or blind faith, but on a sophisticated and coherent philosophical framework that encompasses the nature of reality, the continuity of consciousness, and the power of our own minds. This article is an in-depth exploration of this sane, compassionate, and courageous approach to life's final chapter. We will journey into the core Buddhist doctrines that reframe our understanding of what it means to die. We will examine the intricate relationship between karma and the process of rebirth. We will explore the vital art of preparing for our own death throughout our lives. And we will look at the practical guidance the tradition offers for supporting others through the dying process. This is not a morbid inquiry, but a life-affirming one. It is a guide to understanding how a wise and clear-eyed relationship with our own mortality can infuse our lives with meaning, urgency, and a profound and unshakable peace. Part 1. The Foundational View: Death through the Lens of the 3 Marks of Existence. To understand the Buddhist view of death, one must first understand the Buddhist view of life. The entire philosophical edifice rests upon the direct, experiential insight into the 3 marks of existence, tilakkhana, 3 universal characteristics that define all conditioned phenomena. 1. Anicca, impermanence, the law of constant change. The first mark, anicca, is the truth that nothing is static. Everything is in a constant state of flux. From the subatomic level to the cosmic, reality is not a collection of solid things, but a dynamic, flowing process. Our bodies are changing with every breath. Our cells are dying and being replaced. Our thoughts and feelings are a ceaseless, flowing stream. From this perspective, death is not a singular, anomalous event that rudely interrupts a static existence. It is simply a more dramatic and obvious manifestation of the change that has been happening in every single moment of our lives. We have, in a sense, been dying and being reborn from moment to moment since we were conceived. The final cessation of the breath is merely the culmination of this lifelong process of change. To fear death, therefore, is to be at war with the fundamental, non-negotiable nature of the universe. To find peace with death is to first find peace with the reality of impermanence. The practice of mindfully observing this constant change in our own experience is the first step in preparing for our final dissolution. 2. Dukkha, unsatisfactoriness, the stress of clinging to the impermanent. The second mark, dukkha, points to the inherent stress and unsatisfactoriness that comes from our attachment to impermanent things. We suffer because we cling to things as if they were permanent. And we are terrified of losing them. Our greatest attachments are often to our own bodies, our identities, and our loved ones. Therefore, death, which represents the inevitable loss of all these things, becomes the source of our greatest fear and suffering. The Buddhist path is a gradual training in letting go. By learning to hold our lives, our possessions, our relationships, and even our own identities with a lighter, non-clinging touch, we are directly reducing the amount of suffering we will experience when the time comes to let them go completely. A life spent practicing non-attachment is a life spent preparing for a peaceful death. 3. Anatta, non-self, the dissolution of an illusion. This is the most profound and liberating insight. The doctrine of anatta states that there is no fixed, solid, independent self, or soul, that exists at the core of our being. What we call a self is a conditioned, interdependent process, a temporary confluence of the five aggregates: form, body, feelings, perceptions, mental formations, and consciousness. This insight completely revolutionizes our understanding of death. If there is no solid me to begin with, then what is it that actually dies? Death is not the annihilation of a real, solid self. It is the dissolution of this temporary psychophysical process. It is the unbinding of the five aggregates. The fear of annihilation is rooted in our mistaken identification with this process as a permanent me. When this identification is weakened through wisdom, the fear of death is correspondingly diminished. From the perspective of anatta, death is not the extinguishing of the light, but the dismantling of the lamp. The process of combustion, our life, ceases. But the fundamental energy of the universe is not destroyed. The stream of consciousness, as we will see, is said to continue, conditioned by our past actions. The terror of death is the ego's terror of its own non-existence. The wisdom of non-self reveals that this solid ego was a fiction all along. To realize this is to find a freedom that even death cannot touch. Part 2. The Law of Continuity, Understanding Karma and Rebirth. The Buddhist view of what happens after death is one of its most defining and often misunderstood teachings. The doctrine of rebirth, punabhava, literally, again becoming, is not the same as the popular Hindu concept of reincarnation, which posits the transmigration of an eternal, unchanging soul, Atman, from one body to another. The Buddhist concept, grounded in the principle of non-self, is more subtle. There is no thing, no soul, no essence, that travels from one life to the next. So what is it that is reborn? The analogy most often used is that of one candle flame lighting another. The flame of the second candle is neither the same as, nor entirely different from, the flame of the first. There is a clear causal continuity, but no identical substance has passed between them. What provides this causal continuity from one life to the next is karma, kamma. Karma is the energy of our intentional actions. Every action we perform with our body, speech, and mind, if it is driven by intention, satana, plants a seed in our stream of consciousness. Wholesome, skillful intentions, rooted in kindness, generosity, and clarity, plant seeds of future happiness. Unwholesome, unskillful intentions, rooted in greed, hatred, and delusion, plant seeds of future suffering. At the moment of death, the physical body and its associated consciousness cease. However, this deep stream of karmic conditioning, this bundle of unresolved energies and latent tendencies, does not simply vanish. The final moment of consciousness in this life acts as a condition for the very first moment of consciousness in a new life, in a new form, that is in harmony with the karmic signature of that stream. Therefore, we are reborn not as an identical person, but as a new manifestation of a continuously evolving, causally connected process. This understanding has profound implications for how we live and how we die. It gives profound meaning to our present actions. Every moment of our life is an opportunity to create the causes for a fortunate future, both later in this life and in lives to come. A moral and well-lived life is the best possible preparation for death. It explains the state of our mind at the moment of death as critically important. The Buddha taught that the final thought moment of a dying person is particularly potent in conditioning the next birth. A mind that dies in a state of peace, acceptance, and goodwill is likely to be propelled towards a fortunate rebirth. A mind that dies in a state of fear, anger, or regret is likely to be propelled towards an unfortunate one. This is why the Buddhist art of dying is so focused on cultivating a peaceful and wholesome state of mind in the final moments. Part 3. The Art of Dying, Preparing for a Skillful Transition. In the Buddhist tradition, death is not an event to be passively awaited, but a skill to be actively cultivated throughout one's life. A good death is the natural fruit of a good life. There are several key practices for this preparation. 1. The practice of mindfulness of death, maranasati. This is the central and most powerful practice for preparing for death. It is the regular, conscious contemplation of the certainty and unpredictability of our own demise. The Buddha did not encourage this to be morbid or depressing. On the contrary, he taught it as a powerful catalyst for joyful and diligent living. It overcomes complacency and procrastination. When we truly take on board the fact that we could die at any moment, we are less likely to waste our precious time on trivialities and conflicts. It creates a sense of spiritual urgency, samvega, to practice the Dharma and to get our priorities straight now. It reduces the fear of death. Fear thrives on denial and unfamiliarity. By mindfully and gently turning our attention toward death again and again, we familiarize ourselves with it. It ceases to be a terrifying, unknown monster and becomes a natural and accepted part of life. It inspires us to live a life free of regret. The regular contemplation of death prompts us to ask, if I were to die today, would I be at peace with how I have lived? This encourages us to heal broken relationships, to express our love, and to live a life of ethical integrity, so that when our time comes, we can die with a clear conscience. The practice can be as simple as reminding oneself each morning, I am of a nature to die, death is certain, or as deep as visualizing the decay of one's own body in meditation. The goal is the same, to live each day with the wisdom of our own mortality as our constant, life-affirming companion. 2. The practice of ethical living, sila. As we have seen, our karmic state is crucial. The most effective way to ensure a peaceful mind at death is to have lived a life of harmlessness and integrity. By consistently practicing right speech, right action, and right livelihood, we create a mind that is naturally free from the heavy burdens of guilt, shame, and remorse. A clear conscience is one of the greatest sources of peace, and this peace is an invaluable asset when facing death. 3. The practice of mental cultivation, bhavana. A life spent training the mind through meditation is a life spent preparing for death. Through mindfulness and concentration practices, we develop a mind that is stable, clear, and less prone to being hijacked by fear or panic. We learn to observe our thoughts and emotions without identifying with them. This skill is absolutely essential in the dying process, when the mind may be assailed by powerful and challenging experiences. A trained, meditative mind can remain a calm and lucid observer, rather than a terrified victim of its own dissolution. 4. The practice of letting go, nekkhamma. A peaceful death is a death free from clinging. Throughout our lives, we practice letting go of our attachments, to possessions, to status, to views, and even to our loved ones in a possessive sense. The more we practice this art of non-attachment in life, the easier it will be to perform the ultimate act of letting go at the moment of death. Part 4. The process of dying, navigating the final moments. The Buddhist traditions, particularly the Tibetan school, offer detailed and sophisticated maps of the dying process itself. While the specifics can vary, the general principle is that dying is a process of dissolution, both physically and psychologically, that presents a unique and powerful opportunity for liberation. The dissolution of the elements, in the Tibetan tradition. The Tibetan tradition describes the dying process as a sequential dissolution of the four great elements that compose the body and consciousness. Earth element dissolves into water. The body feels heavy and loses its strength. We feel like we are sinking. Externally, our form seems to waste away. Water element dissolves into fire. We lose control of our bodily fluids. The mind becomes hazy and irritable. Fire element dissolves into air, or wind. The body loses its heat. We have difficulty breathing, and our inhalation becomes short while our exhalation becomes long. The mind becomes confused and may experience hallucinations. Air element dissolves into consciousness. The breath ceases. This is the moment of clinical death, the bardo of dying and the clear light. According to texts like the Bardo Thodol, often known as the Tibetan Book of the Dead, at the moment the breath ceases, the most profound and significant event occurs. For a brief period, the ordinary, conceptual mind dissolves, and the practitioner is confronted with the fundamental, luminous nature of their own consciousness. This is called the dawning of the ground luminosity or the clear light of death. This is the ultimate opportunity for liberation. If the practitioner has been trained in meditation and has some familiarity with the nature of their own mind, they can recognize this clear light as their own true nature and merge with it, attaining instant enlightenment. This is the highest form of dying well. However, For most untrained individuals, this experience is overwhelming and terrifying, due to habitual conditioning and a lifetime of identifying with a separate ego. They recoil from this boundless, luminous emptiness and fall unconscious. The subsequent bardos. After this, the consciousness is said to enter a series of intermediate states, or bardos, before a new birth is taken. These include the bardo of reality, where one experiences a cascade of visionary appearances, often interpreted as peaceful and wrathful deities, which are actually projections of one's own mind, and the bardo of becoming, where the karmic winds propel the consciousness toward a new womb and a new rebirth. The Tibetan Book of the Dead is essentially a guidebook to be read to the dying or recently deceased, instructing them on how to navigate these visionary experiences and recognize them as the play of their own mind, thus achieving liberation at each stage. While the Theravada tradition does not have such an elaborate cartography of the after-death states, it shares the core principle: the state of mind at death is paramount in conditioning the future. The final thought moment, which is the culmination of a lifetime of habits, determines the trajectory of the stream of consciousness. Part 5. Supporting the Dying, a compassionate guide for caregivers. The Buddhist tradition offers profound and practical guidance for those who have the precious and challenging task of caring for the dying. The goal is to create an environment and an inner state that is as peaceful and spiritually conducive as possible. 1. Creating a peaceful environment. The physical environment should be calm, quiet, and clean. Harsh lights, loud noises, and unnecessary chatter should be minimized. The dying person should be surrounded by objects that bring them peace and inspiration, such as an image of the Buddha, a flower, or gentle, calming music. 2. The power of right speech. This is not the time for idle gossip or for discussing distressing news or family conflicts in the person's presence. Speech should be gentle, loving, and reassuring. It is also a time for expressing gratitude and love, and for asking for forgiveness for any past harms. Hearing words of love and forgiveness can be a powerful way to help the dying person let go of their own regrets and find peace. 3. Offering spiritual support. Reminding them of their good deeds. Gently remind the dying person of all the good things they have done in their life, their acts of generosity, their kindness to others, the love they have given. This helps to uplift their mind and generate a state of joy and confidence. Reading or chanting Dharma texts. Reading aloud from calming and inspiring scriptures, such as the Metta Sutta on loving kindness, or the Heart Sutra, can be deeply soothing. The sound of chanting can also have a very calming effect, even if the person does not understand the words. Guiding them in simple practices. If the person is receptive, you can gently guide them in simple practices, such as bringing their attention to their breath or silently repeating a simple mantra like, Bado, the awakened one. The key is to be sensitive and not to impose anything. 4. The caregiver's own practice. Caring for the dying can be emotionally and physically draining. It is essential for the caregiver to maintain their own spiritual practice. By practicing mindfulness, by cultivating compassion for both the dying person and for oneself, and by contemplating the impermanence of the situation, the caregiver can remain a calm and stable presence. The peace in the caregiver's own heart is one of the greatest gifts they can offer to the person who is dying. Conclusion. Death is the ultimate homecoming. The Buddhist view on death and dying is a profound and compassionate reframing of life's greatest challenge. It strips death of its terrifying mask of annihilation and reveals it as a natural transition, a moment of unparalleled potential, and the ultimate test of our spiritual practice. It teaches us that the fear of death is rooted in ignorance and clinging, ignorance of the fluid, selfless nature of our own being, and clinging to an impermanent life as if it were a permanent possession. The entire path of the Dharma, the cultivation of ethical living, the training of the mind in mindfulness and compassion, and the development of liberating wisdom, is, in essence, a preparation for this final moment. By embracing the practice of Maranasati, mindfulness of death, we learn to live our lives with a greater sense of purpose, urgency, and joy. By understanding the laws of karma and rebirth, we infuse our every action with a profound sense of meaning and responsibility. By learning to support the dying with skill and compassion, we transform one of life's most difficult experiences into an act of supreme love. Ultimately, The Buddha's teaching is an invitation to make friends with our own mortality. It is a path that leads us to a place where we can face our final breath not with terror, but with the calm, courageous, and peaceful heart of one who has trained well and is ready to go home to the luminous, unconditioned nature of reality itself. It is the wisdom that allows us to live fully and to die freely.